Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with my first Panda palette update for 2023. This year I am panning my Nick Tutorials and Beauty Bay palette, and yeah, I have been working on it obviously for 1 month now. I already had some decent progress on this palette at the beginning of the year. Nothing like extreme, but I had a few pans, and yeah, I'm excited to share with you where I am with this palette today. But before I jump into the palette itself, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you in the family. Let's jump into the video. Just because I think I'm gonna need a lot of space here for the pictures because the palette is quite large, I'm gonna scooch to the side. So this right here is where I was with the palette at the introduction. You can see, like I said, I had a couple pans and the palette looked used, but I obviously had a lot of product left in the palette. So that is where I was last time. So I'm gonna hold up the palette for a little bit, then I'm gonna just put up a picture because it's easier. But this is where I am today. But again, I will have the difference here so you can see it more easily. So let's start with the first shade in the palette. Just briefly, by the way, before I do that, my goals for the first month of the year was just to play around with the palette, hit at least 2 pans, but I didn't really have any focus shades. I didn't have any goals apart from that. But yeah, let's jump over the progress. So the first shade in the palette is Redemption. This is this beautiful orange shade. I'm actually wearing this as a base on the inner part of my lids today. I have a shimmer on top of it, but it's also what's in my crease in that area. So I used the shadow 5 times in the first month. Pretty decent. I have a little bit of a dip in it now, but I don't think this is one that I'm going to focus on too much now in winter. When we get into spring, I think I'm going to reach for this one more. Then we have the shade Blend and Snap, which is this beautiful pink shade, and I actually was able to hit pan on this eyeshadow. I used it 7 times and it did take me 7 times to hit pan. So yeah, it's a very small pan, but I do have pan on this eyeshadow, which is great. Then next to that we have the shade Ivy, which I already had pan on at the beginning of the year, and I have used this one 8 times in the first month. Second to last on the first row we have the shade Slasher, which I used 5 times as well. I quite like this. It's a really dark kind of purpley shade. It's not super bright though, so it can easily incorporate into everyday looks. I haven't really been using these deeper shades very much because I'm still panning my Modern Renaissance palette, which I will cover in a second. But I did reach for this one at least 5 times. 5 AM on the end I didn't use as much. I only reached for this one 3 times. I kind of had an official goal to reach for every single shade in this palette at least 5 times this month, and I'm filming this on the 29th, so I have a couple more days to go, but I won't be able to do that, but I'm still happy with the progress, and this is one of the shades that I wasn't able to reach for 5 times. Moving on to the second row, we have the shade Roxy Catan, which is another one that I actually was able to hit pan on. This is a beautiful rose gold kind of shade, and I use this a lot topped on other shades or on its own, and it's really pretty. I quite like this shade. It took me 6 uses to hit pan, and I used this one 8 times in total. Next to that we have the shade Vla, which is another one that I already had pan on at the beginning of the year, but I have used this one 5 times in the past month, so I have expanded that pan a little bit. Then for the middle of the second row we have the shade Mikai, which is another one I reached for 5 times. I do have a decent dip in this eyeshadow now, and it's a very bright red. It's a very intense red color. It's probably the most red eyeshadow that I have in my collection, not true red. I do like it, but it's not something that I can wear every single day, but I'm happy with 5 uses. Then we have the shade Mira, which is the last pan I was able to hit in the past month, which means I hit 3 pans, and I'm really happy with that. This one I have used 12 times, and it took me 12 uses to hit pan. I haven't used it since I hit pan, but it's a decent sized pan that I've hit, and it's one that I can use quite often, like every day. It's very kind of orangey tone though. It's quite a bright kind of neutral shade, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think this one might not be as easy to finish as I thought, but I'm going to continue working on it. I might franken some of this you know, kind of to make it easier to work later in the year, but for now I do enjoy this shade. Then we have the shade Underground, which is the only shade in the palette that I haven't used. I mentioned this in the intro, but I do not like this eyeshadow very much. I might use it a handful of times this year. I also want to try this out as a nail polish, but I just don't really like this shade, so I wasn't able to use it at all in the first month of the year. Then we're moving on to the second to last row, and we have the shade Plot Twist, which is this beautiful light blue. Again, I had pan on this one before. I also had pan on Underground before. Obviously I haven't used it, but I had to have a little pan on there. Plot Twist I used 4 times, which is pretty good. It's a very light blue. It's almost like it's almost too powdery. I wish it was a slightly bit deeper, but yeah, I can use this eyeshadow. I used it a lot to blend out other shadows. A lot of times when I have been using it, I have mixed this a tiny bit with Amsterdam, just to kind of get that blend better, because it's almost too light to use to blend out blues. Then we have the shade Aura, which I used once. Not the best, but it's quite similar to Roxy Catan, just a bit more orangey. But yeah, I'm gonna try to use this one more in the upcoming months. One of my most used shades of the Mila is the next one, which is Basic Truths. This one I used 10 times in the first month of the year. Yeah, I use this as a blending out shade. I don't use these type of shades to set my eyelid, but I do use them to blend out my eyeshadow. And I had pan on this one already, as you can see in the introduction picture, but I was able to expand that pan quite decently, so that is where I'm with Basic Truths. I think I'm pronouncing that right, by the way. It is Dutch. Then we have the shade All In, which is one of my favorite shadows in the palette. I was able to reach for this one 4 times, and again, I already had a pan on this one. I rolled it into the project, so yeah, it's one that I'm not worried about finish. I could easily use this eyeshadow every day. I love it. But I have been trying to play around with other shades and other things that I'm panning in this palette, and not just focusing on this eyeshadow, because again, I could easily have had like 20 uses on this eyeshadow if I wanted. But again, I wanted to get kind of an equal amount of usage on every shade, if that makes sense, in the first month. Then we have the shade Ooh, which is this kind of weird green shade. It's a very, very strange kind of green, but I used this one twice. Again, it's not my favorite shade in the palette, but I think I can use it with some of these eyeshadows. I went over my goals in the introduction video, but some of these eyeshadows I mainly just want to pan on. I'm not too bothered about finishing them, and Ooh is one of them, because I don't think I would be able to finish that this year. Then for the last row we have the shade Pride, which is the second one of my favorite eyeshadows in this palette. It's this beautiful pink with also like multicolored sparkles in it. And Pride I used 5 times this past month. I do have a little bit of a dip in it. I used this on nail polish once, and I did like it. It wasn't my absolute favorite, but yeah, I quite like it. I mean, the dip I have now, I don't know if you can see it in the actual picture, so let me just hold up the palette. But I do think it's this one in the corner here. I do think I have a decent dip in there, and hopefully maybe I can pan on this next month or the month after. Then we have the shade Summer, which is kind of like a coral shade. I don't think I'm going to reach for this one too much again in winter. Maybe when I get more into summer and spring. But this one I used 4 times, which is again pretty decent. It is more of a neutral shade than some of the other shades in this palette, so I think once summer hits, I can use this as my everyday crease shade, and I will really like that. So that's the shade Summer. It's probably one of the ones that I have the least dip in actually at the moment in the palette. So I need to step up my usage game on that shade. Then we have the shade Mama Tutorials, which is probably the biggest change in the pictures. At least I think so. You can see it better than I can, because I haven't done a comparison yet. But I have used this shade 8 times, and the reason why I still have so much progress on it after only 8 uses is because I have used this as a nail polish. I'm wearing this as a nail polish today. I'll put it on just for this video so you can see what it looks like, and I really quite like this as a nail polish. I think as an eyeshadow it's not my favorite. I will use it as an eyeshadow too sometimes. I have used it as an eyeshadow I think twice in the past month, and I have done 3 manicures, and the reason why it's 8 uses then instead of 5 is because when I use it as a nail polish, if I do 2 coats of it, I count this as 2 uses, because even as it is, when you use eyeshadow as nail polish, you use a lot of the eyeshadow. So if I do 2 coats of it, I feel like that's more it will be better represented if I do it as 2 uses rather than 1, because again, it will just go away quicker as nail polish either way. So that's just how I calculated. So that's why I have 8 uses, but I do have some really good progress on this. And actually now looking at it, if I keep using it as a nail polish, this might even be one of the first eyeshadows that I finish in the palette, which is not what I expected at the beginning of the year. But again, I have really been enjoying it as a nail polish, and I think this is a really beautiful kind of winter to spring shade, because it's cool toned but it's still like a bit brighter. So I'm going to use this quite a bit now as nail polish. But that is the shade Mama Tutorials. A bit of a tangent then, but I do like it a lot that way, and I just wanted to share that with you. Then we have the shade Amsterdam, which is this kind of really unique kind of blue. The formula of this is not that great, to be honest. It's quite patchy, it's hard to blend, and if you like build it up on top of itself, it can easily, like I said, be patchy and blend away to like nothing. So yeah, it's not my favorite formula in this palette, but I do really like the shade, so it's a bit of a shame that the formula isn't better. With this one again, I just kind of want to hit pan on it. I'm going to continue using it obviously in some looks, but yeah, it's not my favorite. I do have a little bit of dip in it now though, and I have used this one 4 times. Then the last shadow in the palette we have Mr. Tutorials, which I have used once. This shadow is beautiful. I actually used it once all over my lid, and then I topped it off with all in, just in like my inner part of my lid, and I really like that, so I think I'm going to do that look again. I think this one is more of an autumnal shade though, so I think I'm going to reach for this one more towards the end of the year, but I will try to get some use on it prior, because if I do want to finish this eyeshadow, I will obviously have to use it more than just in autumn. But that is the first month of my Panda palette. I'm really happy with the progress. I obviously, when it comes to Panda palette, like, you will have to have a lot of progress each month in order to finish the eyeshadow palette, but with this one I do want to finish most of the shades, but I'm not too bothered about some of the shades, which I have mentioned again in this video as well as in my introduction. But with this palette I'm gonna kind of switch up next month a little bit, because this month, like I said, I just want to play around with the palette. However, I do want to pick 2 focus shadows each month, because this is a larger palette. It has 20 shades in it, so just doing 1 per month is not going to cut it, so I'm going to pick 2 shadows per month to focus on. So the first month, which is February, obviously, when I'm going to do the focus shadows at least, is more of obviously Valentine's month. So the 2 shadows that I have picked to focus on is the shade Blend and Snap and Mikai, which is the pink and the red. The pink, again, I already have pan on, but I just want to kind of continue working on that eyeshadow. And then Mikai, I want to try to hit pan on and just obviously again expand that pan. With the focus eyeshadows, I'm going to try to use them 10 to 15 times. We'll see how it goes, but I do really want to get some decent use out of those eyeshadows. So again, those will be my 2 focuses. Additional to that, I do want to try to hit pan on Pride, because I think Pride will go really well with those pinky red tone looks. And yeah, I think I can hit pan on that eyeshadow. And if I can hit pan on 1 more shade, again, that would be nice. I'm not going to be as focused on hitting pan on, like, you know, several shadows this next month. I do at least want to focus on those kind of focus eyeshadows mainly. So that is where I am with my NYX Tutorials and Beauty Bay palette. Let me quickly just go and grab my Modern Renaissance palette, and I'm going to cover where I am with that palette now. So with my Modern Renaissance palette, I have 3 shadows left, and obviously if you follow my last year's project pan, you know this, but this is what it looked like last month at the finale for 2022. I have the shade Love Letter left, Cypress Umber and Red Ochre, and I'm just going to show you what the palette looks like now. This is where I am now. So again, you will have the comparisons pictures here just for simplicity, but I'm going to go through each shade in order. So the first eyeshadow we have is Love Letter, which is not my favorite shadow in the palette. It's probably the one that's going to be hardest to finish for me. I did use this one 7 times so far. I'm gonna try to reach for it a couple more times. My goal was to reach for it 10 times this month, and unless I do my makeup twice, either Monday or Tuesday, I won't be able to hit that goal. But who knows, maybe I will if we go out for dinner on Monday or Tuesday, like, you know, a date night or something. I will redo my makeup, so that way, or even, you know, if I redo my makeup for today, I will be able to get that use in, because I will use this every single time I do my makeup, just to get as many uses as I can before the end of the month. But currently I do have 7 uses. Then we have the shade Cypress Umber, which is this deep brown right here. This one I have used 12 times, and similarly to Love Letter, my goal for this month was to reach for it 15 times. So I have 3 more uses to go. So again, I'm going to reach for this one in combination with Love Letter, just to get as many uses as I can out of it. But I'm really happy with this usage. Again, you're going to see the progress better. I think both of these have a slight pan expansion. But the biggest change, I think, comes in Red Ochre, which I have used 15 times, and that was my goal for this shadow. And I think the pan expansion is really, really large on this eyeshadow. I think you can definitely see it, hopefully, in the pictures. But yeah, this one is one that I'm hopefully going to be able to finish next month. And that's going to be my goal with this palette, is just to finish Red Ochre and then try to get as much use out of these 2 as I can. Maybe I'll try to reach for both of those shades 5 to 10 times each. We'll see how it goes. I'm probably gonna have to check my other projects and you see how I do. Also, February is a shorter month, so maybe I should just go for 5 uses on each, but obviously again I'm going to try to use this as much as possible, because my main goal is to get this out by the end of the first quarter, which would be 2 more months from now. So I'm going to have to pick it up with this one if I'm going to get all of the shades out. Again, I'm mainly worried about Love Letter, but that is where I am with this palette. Also, quickly, I did mention at my last update on my finale, introduction, whatever, that I wanted to franken this palette. However, I have changed my mind. I don't think I'm going to franken it. Maybe Love Letter, but not now, maybe in the end of the month, depending on how much I have left at the next update, because if I don't think I can finish it in the month of March, I might franken it then. But I guess it is a pinky shade. It might go really well with Blend Blend Snap and Make High from my focus shadows from the other palette. So we'll see how it goes, but that is my Modern Renaissance update. And that, you guys, was my overall update for my Panda palette. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Let me know if you're planning a palette this year and what you're planning. If you do post on YouTube, I have most likely seen your introduction or your update if you don't know about update already, because I do follow this project pretty religiously. But yeah, if you don't do it on Instagram, or if you do it just on your own time, let me know what you're planning down below. And otherwise, I really hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are, and I'll catch you in my next one. Bye guys.